are doing what?
Book 5.
Book 5, the slow movement of the Vivaldi Concerto in A minor. So let's play it first. All right. Take your time.
We got all day.
So feel the beat inside of yourself, the heartbeat of the music, and think about your shifting from the technical front. Sorry, my wrist is really out of tune, sorry. Can't bear that. So you have the first of the oh gosh, brain. First of that set. First position. Second position. Going to third position. Third one in third position. So first, second, third is patterned by the shifting that we're in. Okay, one more time from the beginning. First position. Second position. Third. Think about your tracks. Don't come away from the bridge. In a bit. In a bit more. And a bit more. You're up. One, three, three. Oh, I thought that was some sort of lovely butterfly, and it's just a fag packet plastic that someone's obviously just picked off and let go.
Yeah.
That's so
It's
pleased.
a London butterfly.
Oh, it's a London.
It's a London butterfly.
It's like a swan made out of polystyrene.
We're allowed to find beauty in strange things. It's okay.
Like I'm quite enjoying this decorated tree.
Are you?
Yeah.
I wish
it's
someone
really
would
the
go up
green.
it with a cherry picker and take them out. Right, let's play from. And just think about your tracks, because neither of you are utilising quite the amount that you can. And so when we get to here, 1, 1. So that's all in the same position as is this. And then you come to 3 and there you are. So in the middle, because you need the long down bow, you don't need to be right at the tip. because
I
you've
thought
got,
you were talking about tracks. Yeah.
yeah. So far away from the bridge and in the middle of the bow. Yeah, we're really lying tune. Let's just tune, please.
My tiny bit high.
No, I think you're right. You're a tiny bit high. Okay.
Where are we going to sing?
Much better. Okay, let's just put this to bed. It's gross, let's not do it. Really. If you want to do big shifts, do romantic music.
Okay.
Please, please. Right. From the loud one.
Did I go up into third then?
Have you made a change on purpose,
No.
or is it just a memory slip? Yeah, you go to 4, which is really hard, but I think it's a really, very well-placed challenge for the kids.
Yeah, that is
How far is the shift?
semitone. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what
That's what's tricky about it. Is you think, oh, here we go, because it's such a
Yeah.
big interval, and so this is one of the things that the kids all the time still struggle with, even in the middle of book 5. I said to someone yesterday, oh, Lila, like, you know, she's on third movement of Vivaldi G Minor, and we were talking about a shift very similar to this. That, and I said, what's the interval you're shifting? And she went, it's 9. I was like, no, that's the interval you're hearing. What's the interval you're shifting? And she then was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a semitone. Because if you let your ears guide you when you have a big interval like here as well, you'll go speeding off to get high, but it's not high, it's a semitone higher. So you've got to really, but I think it's really easy. I think it's a very well placed challenge for it. I don't think it's too early, too hard. Okay, one more time, same place. Gorgeous. One. And we're counting 4 quaver beats plus a pause in the last one. Very well. Oh no, not plus a pause, but with a red, so similar. Good, well done everyone. Have a seat.
I find shifting is definitely one of the hardest things to memorise.
Yeah. What are your memory strategies?
I think it has to be strategies for shifting, yeah.
Yeah. What are? Can you name one for me?
Colours.
So that's a
Like
visual
thinking,
learning.
yeah,
Visual
thinking
learning
page.
strategy, isn't it? Because you're imagining what the page looks like. Good.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine it but you can't picture it precisely, what would you use? to help you or your students with that?
Like a flaggy system. You kind of have.
If you know you don't know it, someone telling you that you're not in the right place is not helpful because you already know you don't know it. So how can you get yourself to the stage where you think you're ready to test yourself, whether you do know it or not? Joe, any ideas? Particularly for visual learners.
For visual learners, try practicing a little chunk at a time.
Yep.
And get them to do that little chunk with their eyes closed or something, or even just to try and take it out of that context a little bit.
Yeah. With the music,
Yeah.
because you need to memorise what it looks like.
Yeah.
So it's not about whether they know the piece inside their mind or not. Look away is my shorthand for it. If you look once, you play without looking. You look once, you play twice without looking. You look once, you play 3 times without looking, and you go up to 5. Then you've done it, whatever that adds up to, 12 times or something. And it's likely that you can then imagine literally what it goes red, blue, red. Not just, I can sort of see the notes and I can sort of know that there are some colours, but I can't remember exactly what they are. And also obviously helps you with muscle memory, just through the repetition. Good, another strategy for memorising shifting. We touched upon it
shift
earlier.
on its own, and then practicing the run up to it.
Good, yeah, excellent. So something like bar 2, you could just put that, just do that loads of times to really just get the repetition and the muscle memory, and then put it in context from here. Yes, good. Another strategy for, what's the strategy we talked about earlier? Can anyone remember? I just very briefly touched on it, so if you can't, I'm not going to be upset.
Your guide fingers up.
No, first position, first time. First position, first time in the sequence. Second time, second position. Third time, third position. So patterns.
Right.
So if you can find a pattern, like you've got a sequence and it goes first position, second position, third position. This one's not quite that simple because it goes straight from second into third. But, you know, broadly useful.
That's what I mean by flags, is like you'd find, those kind of moments.
Like the crossroads.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought you meant play the flag game. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, I think that's something different.
Yeah, and things like, you know,
Stop repair.
play high on the string, low on the string, high on the string. Like just the very simple patterns that might just make you remember. Like the tricky bit goes into the tricky position. Da 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 da. That means, what's the hardest thing that you could do at the moment at this stage? Probably shifting onto a 4 in second position's pretty high up there. So therefore that's what they're going to do.
But the stop, think traffic lights as well, like just stopping
Yeah.
and
Plotting what's
consciously
about to
thinking
happen.
what's
Yeah.
going to happen next.
Absolutely. Great. And, you know, running through it in your head when you're on the bus on the way to school. Can you remember where you're supposed to be? Can you remember the piece? Like, it will test your memory, and it will test, if you know how it goes, you can hear the tune in your head, but you don't know what finger you would be playing on, then you're, you know, a lot of the way through your memorising process, but you haven't quite memorised the technical where you are in the piece, in the positions element. Good. So your tick boxes are going to, have you copied them in? Go on, give me some good news.
I haven't.
Well done, Hannah. I can see
Yes,
that
you
you
have.
have.
I've printed them out. I just haven't.
Okay, I'm going to read them quickly, but I'm not expecting you to write them down because you can do it at home. Calm, very important teaching point of this piece. This is their first slow movement. So they've never really played anything that's got to be, you know, if you think about book 3, there's nothing slow in it at all. If you think about book 4, you've got those slow sections in the middle of the sights, but they're still pretty active. Da da dee 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 dee. They've never had anything that's got this kind of like.
Got the lullaby.
Yeah, the lullabies. Definitely, you could have practiced that, and I think that would be what's kind of preparing them for this. But like, yeah, the
And
I
then
don't
it
want
has
to call it a real piece, but the concerto movement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great shifting, intonation, tone, dynamics, trills and vibrato, and we want to keep the trills in the speed of a slow movement. Do you remember talking about that before?
Yeah, and it was the upper note trill, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
Generally, the trills thing I was saying, it's kind of unclear as far as I understand, which may be wrong, whether you would approach a piece, a trill that's got the note that would be your upper note. So if you look at bar 6, I think that you could make an argument for this, because then you're not interrupting the downward scale. But you could also say, no, I'm going to do it the other way. And re-emphasise that upper note. Whereas bar 10, I'm sure we've had this conversation.
yeah, it was when you gave me a lesson on it.
Ah, okay, thank you. I was like, what? Oh, why do I feel like I'm repeating myself? I don't mind at all, I was just confused about our teaching points. Excellent, yes. So that's why I think that one is written, like bar 9 at the beginning and bar 10 at the beginning, and bar 11, they are written as non-optional upper note trills, because you're coming from a third above, so you need to fill that second space. Whereas, again, in bar 12, you've got the choice because you're coming from that note, and at the end, you've got the choice. So you can give your students that choice if you want, or you can just decide that this is how you teach it and play it.
Sorry, you might have just mentioned this in bar 12.
Yeah.
Again, that's a choice?
Yeah, because it's the note. So what you're looking for in terms of whether it's a choice or not is the note before the upper note of the trill.
Yeah.
Then a lower note trill would be acceptable because you've just played the upper note.
Right.
As far as I understand.
That makes sense.
But you can also choose to re-emphasise that upper note by doing it again.
Yeah.
So the choice ones are...
So it's basically, in this piece, they've written all of the non-choice ones in to sort of force you to do upper note trills by writing an acciaccatura on 9, 10 and 11. All the rest of them come from the upper note, so you can do either, to my mind, or you can do a lower note trill.
It's only 14 vowels, this piece.
I know, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And it does tend to be quite a nice one for the kids to land on, especially if they've done all the double stops in the Barkavots, which makes it quite tricky. Quite a lot of mine don't do the double stops in Barkavots the first time, but you know, they tend to get this done and dusted in a couple of weeks, especially if you are now being relaxed about whether they learn things off by heart or not, which I am. Boxes, bar 2, first 3 beats.
First 3 beats? Oh.
Off bar 2. That shift we were talking about before. Bar 11 into bar 12, first 3 beats. And I would say that first box only needs to be 5 times. This one I put 6 or 7. And mostly I do want it to start from here for the bow distribution and the echo. But if they're doing that beautifully, you could just make the box. So, you know, it's flexible. And then from there, the pianissimo at the end of 12 to the end. You alright now? Your pencil. I can give you another one, but I don't know where yours is. Do you want another one? Box of them, not box. Bag. Pencil case, that's the one I was looking for.
All those words.
Yeah. Plastic thing.
Yeah.
Pouch.
So you say the last beat of bar 12 to the end?
Yeah. So, and in that box, what have we got that you need to just pay attention to? That last one. Should we just play it?
Yeah, how many would you do for the last one?
5. Because it's quite long, and it's not massively difficult.
So replacing
It's more about awareness of what they're doing rather than it actually being a 10,000 times to get it right every time kind of box.
But the shift down with the 3.
Yeah, the shift into second position at the end. This fingering, to remember to do that, it's still unusual for them to have done that. The crescendo, extension, to get that tone and a half extension really good. And then the bowing here, this is one of those moments that you were talking about in Bach Bourrée, like you've got all of those different really extreme changes of bow speed. Make sure they don't double dot. So you've got a really big bow, and then it's 3 times as slow. Because this is 1 quaver, and this is 3. So they've got to have, but it's the top of the crescendo, so it's got to be much slower, much deeper, much closer to the bridge, so that the crescendo doesn't sound like this. If you don't go deep and close, you just lose the peak.
Right.
And then, sort of fading slightly. So I would say once you get to the tip, you slide over to sortasto. Slow your bow so that this doesn't happen. Slow bow, light bow. And then again, heavier and slower, slightly. Yeah, so that last box has got a lot of complicated, and it might not be that good the first time they get their credit for it. It might be great in review, or they might really understand it. But you know, it's a very sophisticated use of bow in that last line. And like I said before, they've never done a slow movement before, and the only really slow pieces they've done are the lullabies, which definitely don't have anything like that in them.
So,
Questions?
So slow bow with the trill as well. So the last trill, so
Yeah.
you don't end up
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Exactly, so save on the C sharp trill, spend on the semiquaver but light so that you don't bulge, and then slow again and a bit heavier on the last note.
The thing for me that I find difficult is to end that last note without it sounding pathetic by the end of the note. Is to
Yeah.
keep the playoff that you get of keeping the tone and actually doing a diminuendo and then somehow losing connection. And that,
So think about your tone triangle, what do you need to have in mind?
So my bow's going slow and my contact point has changed.
Where do you think your contact point would start at the beginning of the last note?
Probably middle lane.
If the problem is that your tone is going pathetic, you don't want to go further away.
Okay.
So come in for the beginning of it, and then you can move away to do the diminuendo. Because if you're doing the beginning here, that's going to be lovely, but then when you do the end, that's what you're going.
Yeah.
So it's a track problem.
Okay.
Do you want to do it?
Yes, please.
yes, this is the first piece really that we're doing, like moving tracks within one bow, right?
Yeah, apart from like handle bourrée and review. That one. And waltz, but they're all very easy because they're slow down bows that you just move away, like it's what everyone wants to do automatically, and then we work really hard to stop them doing it all the time, and then you can say, oh, now you can. But yeah, on this level of sophistication, so that is definitely something to think about in the lullabies, is changing tracks in them as preparation for this. Okay, why don't you play me that box that we've just been talking about? Okay, so very very slow. I mean, sorry, very quiet at the beginning. We'll do it one at a time if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so can you make, that was lovely, can you make the G deeper? I can see that your elbow's not in.
Okay.
One more time, so start further away. Then you've got, if you want a more dramatic crescendo, always take the beginning down, yeah?
No.
That was lovely, just stay further away for a
Yeah.
bit longer.
It's that habit, isn't
Yeah.
it?
And D. Yeah. Gorgeous.
Yeah,
Wonderful
yeah.
last note. Absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah,
Works.
well done. Yeah. So it's that awareness.
Yes, archery.
And here, you can just wait while your left hand gets ready. You don't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah? So not good?
No.
Yeah, you need to
that
be more.
shift.
You need to be more sophisticated, more solid in your left hand with what you're doing, just to practice. But yes, if you stop the bow, once your left hand has more confidence, you will be able to do it beautifully.
No.
It's a minor third. You wouldn't use a guide note, but that's how far you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your fingers need to come further apart because you're moving down the string.
That's
So
what
this.
I'm not
You can't just keep that gap the same.
doing. Because that's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, well done.
Thank you.
Same thing.
Okay.
So we start over the fingerboard. You're super quiet right now. Ah, that's the fingering. 1, 3, 1, 1. Come into the bridge. Yeah, that's a lovely G, but it didn't have a gradual enough crescendo towards it. It was like, boom, I'm here. Good. Yeah. Beautiful. Lovely last note. Yeah, well done. I think, is there an accent on that top G? Yes. Gross. Just take that accent out of your mind.
Okay.
Because I could hear that you wanted. And I feel that's a bit
Too much.
sort of swappy. Whereas you've got this wonderful gradual crescendo. And just take it away during the very last 2 centimetres of your bow. Don't hop it. Like that.
So that's it.
The
Drift
diminuendo
away.
just before.
Yeah.
Let it drift.
Not even really a diminuendo, just move your bow.
Yeah.
Should we just do it all together
Yeah.
one more time?
I suppose it's more like thinking of it as a balloon rather than the accent.
Yeah, exactly.
Some kind of-
And you know, I think that is one of the things about adults editing books that are designed for children, that they've kind of, I feel, slightly dumbed down what's written in the music to kind of make it like, look kids, here's the important note. That's what that accent is saying. Any child who's playing at this level, who's got a crescendo before it and those 4 repeated patterns of the E flat and the F natural and then the F sharp, is going to know that they're going towards that. And there's a whole nother discussion to talk about general musicianship in Japan and how it was taught, and my experience of being in Japan doing Mendelssohn Violin Concerto on that subject, but we will have that another time. It takes a long time. Track 4, track 3, track 2. what's in book 5,
Okay.
and I have planned a session on that, so we are not going to talk about those 2 pages, these 2 exercises in very much detail.
Are they meant to warm up for this piece or for the next piece?
What do you think?
I haven't looked at them.
Have a little look.
The next piece.
So, one of the reasons I want to do it separately is because the piece isn't in E flat major. It's useful to understand that E flat major and G minor are the same finger patterns often, but this implies that you're going to do a piece in E flat major and you should play this as a warm up every time. Whereas if they're using an actual scales book, they can play G minor to warm up for the concerto in G minor, which I think is much better. But let's just play. So you've got 2 options. Now, in all of the ABRSM books, if you're going to do 2 octaves of a scale in the same position, which is high up, you would not shift. Why would you start on a 3 and then extend? You just do it on a 2. So I very much recommend that you don't ever do that, really. Like, if they've done enough, it's this balance of, like, if they've hardly done any shifting, and book 4's been the first book they've shifted in, possibly this has just been put there to sort of give them some more 3rd position practice. But if you're doing the approach that I am suggesting you do with loads and loads of shifting from book 2, then they've done 3rd position until they're, you know, cows come home, so you don't need to do more.
But
You
is
do
there,
more 4th position.
is there an argument to be made for them not having done much 3rd position work on the G string since Immerse?
Yeah, but does it come in the G minor concerto? I don't think it really goes into that position more than about 2 or 3 times in the whole thing. So there's always an argument for practicing things. Anything that you can mention, the most unmusically satisfying, the most clunky, whatever, or right through the spectrum, right to the most simple, you can always say, well, it's a good idea to practice this because, but it's about what you're going to choose for your students. If they're not practicing for 5 hours a day, which I hope they're not, then it's about choosing what's actually most useful for them. And then I think the top fingering is helpful because they can practice that shift going into 4th position from third finger in 1st position, which they haven't done very much. And then again, that's very helpful. That's very helpful. And then all of the inversions. So we're not going to play those. Let's play the first movement and then have lunch.
And to be honest, that whole comment about 3rd position on the G string, there isn't much of G string playing except for the bar double.
There's hardly any
There's
G
hardly
string
anything.
3rd position in any of the Suzuki books. You need to plug that gap with things like solos for young musicians and different repertoire. else, or take a break or whatever, and then we'll do this one and then have lunch. Does that suit everyone?
Sounds perfect.
Should we have a pee break?
5-minute break?
Yeah.
I was playing a fair amount of that with my eyes somewhere else. I was trying it. So far as that essay.
Are we allowed?
All right, we are recording. So we're going to do the teaching points for Vivaldi G Minor. First movement, and turn it a little bit more. So you're going to copy in the tick boxes, but bowing, memory, dynamics, shifting, tone, boxes, and intonation. And then I guess we should add something like Baroque concerto style.
What was the style of the previous piece?
What do you think?
Baroque slow movement style.
Yes, we are not really playing it in Baroque style, but we are trying to avoid the worst sins of over-romanticising, such as that big shift.
So, avoid romantic sins.
Yeah, good. So a lot of this is just drilling. Some kids will just get on with it, some kids enjoy it, and other kids will be very resistant to doing boxes, and you need to sweeten it with, you know, things like finding the things they really do enjoy. Like at this point, lots of the students are really into improv or folk or something that's not covered within our kind of broad teaching approach, and therefore you might be like, you know, most of them will be practicing by themselves at this point. If they're still practicing with a parent, it's likely that the parent is just making sure they're doing the practice and making sure they're doing what you've asked rather than actually helping, because unless they're a musician, they're not going to understand, you know, how to help. So I think that, you know, talk to the students about why boxes are really important, that they're just not going to learn how to play it at the level that they want, not that you want, that they want, without doing those boxes. And again, I teach it one page at a time, so that you've only got a few boxes to do each practice, because if you try and approach the whole piece, you're going to have like 9 to 12 boxes to do every day, and that's not going to be feasible for most students. Not to mention, very boring way to practice. So the tick box, the repetition boxes I've got are 37 to 40. That. It says 10 in my book, but you know, it can be flexible. It's not super hard. Some people will find it hard. What they often find hard is not to come down . They want to do that. I mean, they don't want to do that, but that's what their fingers want to do, because they're so used to coming down the scale. So it's about, you know, just kind of remembering to stay high on the shift, or not shift the first time and then shift the second time. Some kids will need 23 to 24. And this is sort of an option for you to use a guide note, which would be the one on the A string on the D, note D, so that they can plot therefore with more accuracy. But if they're going to do that, they're going to be kind of playing quite slowly, so that's probably an interim measure if they can't just jump to the 4 in tune.
Probably can do from the Bach double though, right?
Yeah, and it just depends, like, what they've done so far and how demanding they've been, how demanding you've been. You know, whether they've just gone into a full size, for example. If they've just gone into a full size or a 3/4 size at this point, then probably jumping to a 4 in third position is going to be more tricky than they can manage. So you just stick a guide note in there for a while. And then 41 to the first note of 43, and then an overlapping box. are that you hear a lot of this. They find it difficult to keep the triplets even. Give them a little bit of a nudge on the top D. That will help them. And celery, 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 blue. And then also just remembering the first ending and the second ending after those trills. Joe, how would you recommend they approach 41 and 42?
Sorry, 41 and 42? In pairs, because they're adjacent fingers but string apart for the most part.
Good. So what do you mean by pairs, precisely?
Kind of as they're written in twos. Da-da, da-da, da-da.
Ah, from which note?
Well, from the second pair.
Yeah, could do. So smart practice, definitely. Did before that, Hannah? For intonation?
Tonalization.
Can you show me what you mean?
With the minor.
Oh, the piece that we play. Yeah, no, okay. How would you actually teach these two bars to make the intonation really good?
Chords.
Yeah, exactly, double stops. You're going to use loads and loads and loads of that going through book 4, 5 and 6 and beyond. Broken stop 6 is a grade 6 scale, I think. And then grade 7 like that. Bearing in mind the Vivaldi Vivaldi A minor first movement is a grade 7, has been set for grade 7. So, you know, we're not going to even out the scales and arpeggios, sight reading and pieces exactly right. The first movement, ding, 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 ding.
7.
Grade 7, yes.
Interesting.
Partly because we're learning pieces like this, yeah? So Vivaldi A minor first movement is a grade 7 piece, but Perpetual Motion would probably be grade 5, maybe grade 5 and a half.
It is in grade 5.
It's in grade 5, okay. Yeah. So you know, if you take the bottom of the curve of what they're learning, they're hopefully going to be in the ballpark of kind of being ready for that grade in all of the areas, apart from oral, which is a whole different thing. But if you take the top, like their playing level's always going to be higher than their scales and sight reading, unless you're working towards an exam, probably. It's particularly scales and arpeggios, because we don't, you know, I think they're useful, but I wouldn't want a child who's practicing an hour a day to be doing 20 minutes scales and arpeggios, 20 minutes sight reading and 20 minutes pieces, unless they're doing an exam. Okay, any questions about page 1?
We really have to emphasise how slow the bow goes for the triplets. Is that? It's like fast, slow, fast, slow.
Yeah. Well, the speed change.
Yeah.
More than how slow the bow is for the other ones. Yeah.
And do
we kind of pull and then resist, pull, resist. Yeah.
Yeah. And do we, the double stop trill? Are we playing both notes and trilling on both notes?
Look at your music and you can answer your own question.
Okay.
No, that would be. I don't think that happens in the Suzuki repertoire at all.
It would sound wrong. It would sound odd. Yeah.
Good. Second page. Please write at the top of your music. Start up bow spiccato twinkles. What piece is that for, Joe?
The country dance.
Yes, thank you. Major preview. Preparation if you want country dance to be. I really want to open the window, but those guys are smoking probably not even cigarettes, so I'm going to just strip off instead.
They're so naughty.
Huh?
They're so naughty.
I think they'll be happy either way.
So yeah, the up bow spiccato is a big project, and you know, very, very few of my students would learn country dance off the very first time they learn it, but I want them to be off the string quite quickly, kind of by the end of book 5, which is only 3 pieces later. So they've got to be good at spiccato already, and then, you just put it into the piece once they've learnt the piece. It's a bit like etude. If you learn G major when you start etude, you're going to be stuck on etude for a long time, because etude needs G major to be before you actually start learning the really difficult notes and fingers. The same with country dance. You need to have the skills ready for country dance before you get there, so that all you're learning is the new notes, not a major new bowing technique.
So how would you do up bowing?
So we're going to do a whole session on lifted strokes again. It's on my list for next term, but in brief, just starting like that. They could, I very rarely have had a student that can't get off the string, and if they can't, you're just practicing this kind of thing, and then adding some, you know, will often sound gross, and the difference between the balance you've got to find is that if you have a really flat bow hair, you'll find the bounce very easy, but the sound is very harsh. And if you tilt the bow, the bounce disappears, but the sound is much nicer. So you've got to find where they can make the best sound, and that will change over time as they get more experienced at it. So yeah, start with 4, or even maybe 2, or even just like exercises to get off the string, and then just add. So that by the time, like in group, for example, when we do up bow spiccato, we're sometimes playing 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 8. So that's 14 bows, up bows. And in country dance, I think they've got 16 at most. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
But it's a bit like the minuet bowing, minuet plus one that I did in group last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's different because that's not spiccato.
Yeah. And you can also use long, long go, which is really fun. Obviously, that's a really good start for up bow spiccato or lifted strokes, but then turn it into a waltz. And then forward. And it's a bit of a head rock as well, so it's fun for them. Okay, good. Page 2. 65 to 69 is a box. You want to draw their attention to this semitone.
Sorry, I missed that box. What was
65 to 69.
Thank you.
And you want a diminuendo in 69 because you don't want so this is the note.
I had a bit of that in one of my students yesterday.
And for some reason when I was looking at that, I had to just write in bar 68, up, down, those last 2 notes. So I kept pairing them together. And then wondering why I ended up upside down. I was like...
And then 81. For some students, you'll need to go from like 78 instead of just straight on 81. It depends if the trickiness for them is finding this A flat or just getting their fingers around that. It just depends on the student. Some of them will need those trills in a box every time. Most of mine just need the second position one because of the added complication of being in second position. And then this part. So I have the upbeat to 89 through to the first B flat trill in a box.
Why is it tricky? Sorry, I missed.
Because of that second position and also that whole tone perfect fourth intonation.
those, would you play the slurred accented notes before the twirls the same way as you would in the Beethoven in Trio?
No, I just think all those accents, I think they're gross.
So it wouldn't be a Casals thing.
I mean, it's just not that important. I don't understand why would they do that? Like you've got all this right before. Lovely. Not. And then they're like, this is the bit you've got to bring out. Rubbish.
No.
So, no, in fact, I'm going to cross them out right now.
Well,
The accents.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, just get rid of those bars.
Just cut a few notes and we're fine.
Yeah, because if you play. That's really where you're going to, is the E flat, which doesn't have an accent.
I suppose the most you want to do really is more of a line of the first quavers.
I think it's done in the violin. Like
Yeah,
it's a ring note with a load of non-ringing notes. It'll happen.
Mm.
So last box, that bit I just played 94. And to here, so they can practice that shift. I'm gonna open that window. See Portland.
It's so nice
That's so nice. I'm not at all perimenopausal. Refuse to believe that it's
Oh, honey, honey.
anything other than how
You can
it is.
refuse as much as you like.
Aw.
Apparently it can last like 8 years.
Yeah, the average is 7.5. And you know what the average for African American women, who are the only ones that have studied, is 10 years. So I wonder what the difference is here.
Oh, I can wax lyrical on that. We'll talk about that off camera because
Yeah.
there's many reasons why that's the case.
Yeah, well, shit healthcare for a start. Sorry, internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so any questions about page 2? Let's just talk a little bit about these trills with violins in our hands.
One question.
Yeah.
At the top of the page 54 or 5, where you've got lots of the first finger shifts, I call it in my head. That's the first finger
Yeah,
shift of it.
going back down to that B flat all the time.
Yeah. Would you put that in the box?
If they need it. Depends how good they are at shifting, how easy they find it. If they find it hard, put it in a box. If they don't bother.
Yeah, cool.
The boxes I've put in are the ones I've never met a student who doesn't need at least a 5 box on.
Mm.
Everything else might be, even, some of them might need that because they just can't quite organise it instinctively. Fine, stick in a box.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so let's talk about bars 84 into 85 and beyond.
84. Okay.
Yeah, wait, into 85. So we'll play very slowly.
This is the bit I thought I had and I just gave up and got the stand.
Lovely. So what do we need to point out to the students or check that they have noticed or understood or
It's a sequence.
something along those lines? Good. What about those finger patterns? Is it a straightforward sequence?
Moving.
No, exactly. So which finger do we have to... Let's just play the first 2. Same tempo. Okay, so anything changing position?
No.
No, all the same finger pattern. What about there? Yeah, the 1 is low like it was before on the first one, and then moves up on the G string. So you might want to practice. Just join. And what will help them with their intonation
Finger patterns?
Yes, but
Yeah.
that's what we've already talked about.
What will help them is if keep their first finger square and then rock their elbow across to put your second finger down.
Oh, it's not a 2, look. It's a 1.
Oh. It's minor.
So no, not that.
Not that, no.
Hannah, what will help them between
High
those 2 notes?
Maybe
Yeah.
if you have the low 2 down, you can use it
Yeah, maybe, although it's so far away, I'm not quite sure how useful that would be. Maybe. Something completely separate that will really help. Listen. Yeah, which you don't get so much if they left the 2 down. You do a bit better. Good, and then let's play the next one from the 2 in the second position. Yeah, so
that feels quite contracted in terms of where your fingers set across the strings.
It's the same thing with your 1, isn't it?
yeah, the 1 does the same thing. Your fingers feel contracted, yes. Why?
Because you've got a semitone between the D and the E flat.
Yes, exactly right. So the second one, the 1 and the 2 do the same thing, but you've got a whole tone trill. Same, different. Semitone trill. Which means that the difference between and is also changed, yeah? Because your 2 is only a semitone away, whereas before it was a tone away. But I think we tend to think about where the 2 is compared to where it was before, so that doesn't change. And then pull that 2 away for the A flat. So let's go from here again. No, let's go from the beginning of that sequence. One more time. Low, low, low. Low, high, tone. Low. Low, high, semitone. Pull the 2 back. So then shift down. So from there. So you're in a 3. Lovely. So there's a lot to unpack. And the trills, whether you have those first 2 things in a box or not, you still need to go through that, like we just did with them. Whether it then becomes a box or not is down to them and how they're doing.
Maybe a box. I do it like a ghosty box.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that's challenging for them in this page bow control. That one. Actually, as we were playing it, I thought, why don't we shift down there?
And why do that third position shift at the end of bar 83? I don't
Yeah,
understand.
the reason is because they want that big romantic Suzuki sound. So I do it actually because we're not playing it in Baroque style, and I like them to practice those fast shifts. But equally, if I had a child who is,
Struggling.
not loving the violin, not doing very much practice, but still wants to continue, I'd probably just take that out. An extra challenge is not what's needed for those kind of kids. So by the same token, you might play low 3, but that might be just as tricky for them as the 1. I think it probably wouldn't be. I think it would be a bit easier.
Would it still be changing tracks there for the crescendi? At bar 75? Or would you be sticking on one track and just using the circle action?
I mean, you definitely come in a bit. of those is making the tone go wrong, because unless there's a problem with the violin, or they're doing something really odd, like their fingers are not heavy enough, which is very unusual. It's much more common to have too strong in the left hand. The tone triangle will answer the question as to why it's not sounding good. Right, boxes in page 3. 114.
Oops, shit.
For 4 bars. Just to get their fingers around it, just a 5 box normally. And then straight away 119 to 126. They find this really difficult to count, a bit like the notes we were just talking about. And you want to go crescendo towards the up bow, which is strange. And then come away. Sorry. So you want to avoid them playing. What happens? That's what happens.
So crescendo towards the tip.
Yeah. And you want to practice just the ringed note. Whole tone. A whole tone shift again. Come down, whole tone. So we're in yellow with the hopping through. Oh, but then with the beat up. Same. Yeah. That's why it's not written there, because they're all the same. And then another back-to-back box. And then another back-to-back box. This is a guide note, shift onto the 2.
What are the tricky things in those boxes?
Well, mostly just semiquavers and getting them fast enough. The shifting between 3rd position and 2nd position. The triplet timing. And in the last box, I would very much recommend you just practice with them like 10 times, and then that 10 times. So this is probably over a couple of weeks. And then but they've got to understand that the guide note stays there forever. It's just that you stop playing it with the bow. So you don't drop the shift from the 2 onto the 3 or anything. You always do. That's what a guide note shift is. Your guide note will always guide you into that position, and then you put the new finger down when you get there. So once they can play that, do the whole box, but up until then, those are your steps. So this, I would say it's just the shift on 2, and then add 1 note each side. So keep an audible guide note.
You do 10 times just the da.
Yeah, or maybe 5 of each. It depends how quickly that, you know, the number of times is flexible. So, but you definitely want a week at least of just 5 times this, and then 5 times that, minimum. That, 5 times each, yeah, and then that becomes the actual box once they've got the shift reliably in tune.
So whenever you have a box within a box within a box, you just set it back the number of weeks you've got boxes contained within it.
No, it depends how quickly they get it.
Okay.
I mean, some of the students don't even need that in a box because they come and they've been like, I knew that was really hard, so I worked at it really hard to show you. Very unusual, but you know, it does happen. And then others will come, they're just like, I just don't even understand how to do that, and you have to go back. So I would say that's a good box to do as preview during page 2, which I haven't written down. What bar is it, please, someone?
138 into 8 to 9.
It's alright, that's enough.
I mean, I suppose you can even preview it before you get to the piece. Preview it in the A minor. The shifting.
You've got quite a lot of other things that you're previewing. Going to be doing the G minor scale.
Oh yeah.
Got utmost spiccato. There's a lot of notes in this piece. I think probably it's. You could start it during the first page if you were worried about them shifting, but also it's not a fantastically hard shift for them. If they've been doing like tonalisation all on one finger, they can get up a perfect fourth. It's just understanding how it fits into that context. So again, it's like one of those things you might go, oh, okay, I need to be a bit more organised about how I teach shifting, or you might be like, yes, get in, or maybe somewhere in between. Okie dokie. Okay, we've got 2 minutes to do the last page. Start. Big shift practice for second movement. Please write that at the top of this page, 19, and we will talk about what that means when we get to the second movement.
Yeah.
Boxes from 161. That's one, and then this is another one. And how would you practice that, Joe?
Which one? The last one? Same as before.
Yes, tell me.
Which was before.
Which was?
I know I said pairs, but
Yeah, pairs. And?
chords.
Yes, well done. Great.
I did a good job of not saying anything.
Well done, Hannah. Thank you. And we want to notice that 171 and 175 are identical. 171 and 175 are exactly the same.
Oh, yeah.
And then 181 is different. And once my students really understand that and notice it, mostly they can do it perfectly. The memory I'm talking about. And then of course we need the chords at the end. That's hard. You want to make sure that they go from the D and G to the top 2 strings, really almost before the balance point, but certainly by the balance point. They need vibrato on those 2 notes. They need to make sure that their fingers are a tone apart. And they need to change their track from, which is going to be sort of broadly 2. Come in. Otherwise they're going to get that. So come in towards take a pause with a pinch of salt and poker allogando from the bar 193. No, thank you. Something like that, please.
So we take out the poker allogando.
Yeah, I would just do
What
it.
does that mean? Just getting bigger?
Little by little getting broader.
Yeah. So I would just put writ in the last 2 bars. Well, did talk about this piece when we did the memory session. Are you happy to go through and work out where your memory things are in this piece by yourselves?
Yeah. I kind of been doing that as I've been going through it.
Yeah?
Because I have them.
It's not a piece they find horribly difficult to memorise. There just tend to be a few places where they can take the wrong turn. But it's really the third movement of this concerto that is the nightmare to memorise. Most of them, it's really just remembering to stay. The last like 5 lines. Remembering that that's the same, even though they've decorated it. Gooseberry, low blue. And then they're fine. Great! Wonderful. Hooray! Well done, people.